Hey guys, and welcome back to
Megajordinary.
So today we are going to be discussing a really interesting case that I actually personally had never heard of up until recently upon researching this case. But as I always want to put in like a little trigger warning, because we will be discussing some details about murders in this case, and some viewers may find it distressing. All the information that we are discussing in this video we have obtained from online sources, historical archives, and we've just put it all into one video.
Today's case is about Jessepomeroy, America's youngest serial killer. Jessepomeroy was born on the 29th of November 1859 in Charlestown, Massachusetts. He was the second child to Ruth Ann Snowman and Thomas J. Pomeroy. Jesse was born into a poverty-stricken home, and it is said that he suffered a very violent home life.
It is believed by historians that Jesse had started to display very worrying tendencies from a very early age. Major red flags, to be honest. A neighbour claimed that Jesse had stabbed a cat to death before throwing it into a river. And this, I'm sure most of you know, there's a certain criteria to look out for in children to throw caution to the wind, as in a lot of serial killers or murderers in general displayed these tendencies at a young age, and ultimately they ended up being sadistic serial killers or murderers. And harming animals is like one of the biggest red flags. That, along with starting fires and a few other things. And when Jesse done this, he was said to have been only 5 years of age. His teachers also said that he was a very peculiar, intractable, not bad, but very difficult to understand.
So from the winter of 1871 to 1872, several young boys had reported that an older boy had coaxed them into remote areas of Charlestown and subsequently sexually assaulted them, disfiguring their genitalia and faces with a knife. The boys had given a description of their attackers, and it was published in the Boston Globe newspaper.
Once the description had been put out in the newspaper and the news started spreading fast, Jesse's mother Ruth moved herself, Jesse and Jesse's older brother to South Boston. Very clear at this point that she was fully aware that her son was committing these horrific crimes. So you have to say that she basically solicited these crimes.
Enabled them?
She enabled them, yeah. And of course, when they got to South Boston, Jesse continued his crime there. In the autumn of 1872, 2 boys were found on 2 separate occasions. One had been sexually assaulted and tied to a telephone pole, and the other had been found in a very, very bad way on a Boston beach. Now, something to note, when Jesse was born, he had a pupil defect in his right eye, and it meant his pupil was scarred, so he had a white film over his eye for the rest of his life. And one of the boys that had been assaulted in the South Boston attacks said his attacker had this distinctive feature, and so police instantly knew they had to question Jesse. And Jesse was only 13 at the time. What in the world? Like, this is just insane.
Sick.
Yeah.
His case was tried in a juvenile court, and Jesse was found guilty and sentenced to time in a state reform school that was located in Westborough, Massachusetts. He was supposed to remain there until he was 18 and then sent on to an adult's prison. However, Ruth, his mother, managed to get him released a couple of months after his initial sentencing, which
Shocking.
is mad to me.
I don't know how she even done it. And this decision, of course, ended horrifically. 1 month later, in the February of 1874, a little girl named Katie Curran, who was only 10 years old at the time, vanished from South Boston, and she was last seen in Ruth Pomeroy's dressmaker shop, where both of her sons worked. So the police questioned Ruth, Jesse and Jesse's older brother Charles, and searched the premises, but they didn't find any evidence or any trace of Katie there.
And just a couple of weeks after Katie's disappearance, on the 22nd of April, the body of 4-year-old Horus Millen was found on the marsh of Dorchester Bay. It is believed that Horus had been decapitated. The police instantly knew that Jesse was responsible for this crime, so they went ahead and arrested him on the 24th of April 1874. After Jesse's arrest, Ruth had decided to sell her dressmaker shop to fund the trial, presumably. And not long after the shop had been sold, the new owners had discovered the body of Katie Curran in the basement. Her body had been discovered in an ash heap.
It's so strange because the police said that they initially searched the entire dressmaker shop, but yet they didn't find Katie's body at the time, so it would lead you to believe that the body of Katie had been somewhere else and was moved back to the shop. So I thoroughly believe Ruth, the mother, was complicit with his crimes. Like, she helped him. Jesse eventually confessed to the murder of Katie Curran and Horus Millen. His trial began on the 9th of December 1874 and ended the next day. And Jesse had only turned 15 at the time. Literally. He was denied the right to counsel during the trial because he had confessed. And the jury did try to offer Jesse mercy purely based on his age. In regards to the death penalty, they didn't want him to get the death penalty because he was so young, even though these crimes were absolutely horrific. The judge clearly knew he didn't deserve mercy, and so she sentenced him to death.
The governor's office in Boston had refused to sign the judge's order of execution. And 2 years later, Jesse's sentence was changed to life in solitary confinement. Jessepomeroy had tried to escape the Massachusetts prison many times over the course of these 5 decades. He kept making handmade tools in order to do so, and it said that he nearly did escape prison because he had rerouted gas pipes in his cell, which had caused an explosion. The explosion, however, had actually trapped him even more in his own cell and knocked him out.
Jessepomeroy died in prison on the 29th of September in 1932, age 72, and he died from a heart attack, but he died in State Prison Farm, Bridgewater, Massachusetts. He had just been moved there a couple of years prior to live out the rest of his sentence. Although he was only convicted of 2 murders, very obviously committed all the other crimes and assaults on those young boys in Charlestown, it is heavily suggested and heavily believed that he committed many, many more crimes. His crimes are considered hallmark traits of a serial killer. Consistent modus operandi in his victims, location, and method of killing. And what I find that is even scarier from this is, imagine he committed these crimes, horrendous in nature, gruesome, violent attacks on these children whilst he was still a child himself. So can you actually imagine, if he didn't get caught, how his crimes would have progressed? I just can't even think about it. It makes me feel sick. And this was back in literally the 1800s. Crazy. I do believe that the show The Alienist is actually based off of Jessepomeroy, loosely.
So, thank you so much for watching this video. So don't forget, if you like the video, drop a comment, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on notifications to be notified when we drop a new video. That's all for today, and we also have lots of spooky content planned for spooky season, and that will be starting from the first week of October.
Yeah. Bye.